Alright, so with Star Trek Picard Season 3 kind of winding down, I felt inspired to start doing a little bit of Star Trek centric content. So this is my first video in that little bit of a run. I'm here to talk about my favorite captains of all time from Star Trek. Let's get into it. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. So, as you heard at the top, I'm here to talk to you guys about my favorite Star Trek captains of all time. But before we get into that, if this is your first time here to the channel, welcome. If at any point you like what you see or hear, be sure to hit the subscribe button. Click that notification bell so that you know anytime we upload any new videos. Also be sure to hit that thumbs up button, as it really helps us out as well. So with that said, let's jump right on into it. I've got a list of 5 here, and that's pretty much all there is. So, my number 5, and I think this is going to probably catch some people off guard. My number 5 is James T. Kirk. And I mean both the Prime timeline, that is, of course, the William Shatner one we all know, and the Kelvin timeline, which is Chris Pine. Main reason why I have both on here is because I really couldn't decide which one I liked more. So I figured I'd just talk about them both. When it comes to William Shatner's version, I will flat out say that I was not a fan of that James T. Kirk until the movies. I'm not really a big fan of the original Star Trek series. Just never was really my thing, but the 6 movies I love. They're absolutely amazing. They're some of my favorites, and I'll still go back and rewatch them all to this day. So for me, that's where the William Shatner Captain Kirk / Admiral Kirk really kind of comes in. That's where I really enjoy what he brought to the table, as being kind of a rogue captain that is not afraid to voice his opinion, but is still very much a fair and honorable person. He's just kind of, he likes to skim in the gray areas in terms of the rules, so to speak. So in turn, you can say almost the same thing about Chris Pine's Captain Kirk, except for now I get the Kirk earlier in his career that I really liked, and who takes, it seems like, even bigger gambles, with the exception of the one thing is they both cheat at the Kobayashi Maru test, which you see in the Chris Pine movie. So I think it's cool. I really liked his portrayal. Chris has a much more sarcastic and humorous attitude to him, so I think he brought that to this James T. Kirk, and I think that's why I like him almost as much as William Shatner's version. So for that reason, they're tied at number 5. Alright, so number 4 is one that actually just made it onto this list. I can tell you that this list would look a little different if it were not for Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Just got done checking out that season, and so obviously you probably have an idea who I'm talking about, which is Captain Christopher Pike. Pike was always someone that's been alluded to. He was in, I think, one pilot episode of Star Trek the original series. You see him in the Kelvin timeline, here and there, but never anything truly centered around Captain Pike and letting that character grow. At least that I've read or, seen in movies. That is until this show. And Anson Mount killed it with bringing to light a new character that hopefully a lot of Star Trek people have wanted to see. And I thought that Pike's mindset as a captain is much similar to how I think as a person, and I think that probably makes him the most relatable captain to me on this list. He's all about fair, trying to do the right thing, even if it's the thing that might do the most damage, and stuff like that. I enjoyed that character, everything that they did throughout the series, and of course, spoiler for anybody who hasn't watched it, I'm curious to see if this does lead up to his death that he keeps seeing, or that he saw in this vision that he had, which is kind of the whole big underlining theme to season 1 of the show. But yeah, I'm big fan just in how he thinks, how he operates. He likes cooking. and stuff like that. I love cooking, you know, just little things like that where it seems like they really let Anson bring some of his personality into the character. I really like the touches. So if you haven't checked out Strange New Worlds, definitely check it out on Paramount Plus. If you've got it, it's 100% worth it. I really think you'll like the fresh new take on the Star Trek universe, and especially like some of the earlier Enterprise stuff that technically takes place before Kirk comes on board. All right, so I'm just going to tell you right now, the top three pretty much are from my childhood or teenagehood, however you want to put it. But the reason, that's the reason why that they're going to be the top three on this list. They're the ones that I grew up watching, I got the most into, and this is where they really did a good job of connecting the entire Star Trek universe as a whole, in my opinion. And to start that off with, we're going to talk about Captain Kathryn Janeway from Star Trek Voyager. One, first female captain I got to really see do their thing in the Star Trek universe, and I thought that was cool. I'd always wondered why we didn't really get it sooner a lot of the time, but nonetheless they gave us this, and Janeway's character is absolutely amazing. And it's interesting to see where she's at because she struggles with being by the book, and then when she gets mad, she will overlook rules or go against the rules to get what she wants done out of it, or if she's just wanting to avenge something that went wrong, then sometimes morals be damned, she'll just go for it. And I love that about her. And I love how she's very trying to think of how to use it, community driven. And I know that stems from the way Voyager was written. They're trying to get back home, so they had to band up and be more like a family and think like a family. So she did her captainship for the most part around that. Obviously, she was still in charge and whatnot, but she still was very interested in seeing what everybody else had to say. And I think really all of the captains on this list, with the exception of maybe Kirk's, or like that. Pike was very much the same way. He wanted to hear your opinion and everything. Kathryn was definitely the same way because they were just trying to get home. Yeah, that's just all I can say is I was just intrigued by the fact that it is a strong female character, and I really, really just enjoyed that part about Janeway in general, and several of the other characters on that show, like B'Elanna, Seven of Nine. Just a really, really good show that brought a little something different at the time to what they were doing with Star Trek. Really, all three Star Trek shows in the 90s were like that. All right. Number two, Captain Benjamin Sisko. I will flat out admit, at first, when it came to Deep Space Nine, the first few seasons, I was a little on it because of the fact that they were a little stationary, being on a deep space station instead of being in a ship going around and doing things. But nonetheless, as the series went on and they started doing more and exploring more, Sisko really, really blew me away with what he was like. And he was one of those where when you talk about the gray lines and the gray areas, he really, really went deep into that, sometimes into a very dark place, which is kind of understandable given that DS9 went through the Dominion War, which was, as much as I hate to sound like that cliche human thing, I love watching war or battles in movies and TV. Hate in real life, but in TV it makes it interesting for me. And he really blurred a lot of lines morally as a captain with some of the things he did during the war. And I thought that was what made him stand out, other than the fact that he was very, I'm trying to think. Okay, sorry, I had to kind of gather my thoughts up there a little bit. We're talking about Sisko, just kind of started blurring and drawing blanks. But yeah, for the most part, it was his sense of morality and the gray areas within his morality that made him the most intriguing. And you couple that with the fact that he is a spiritual leader for the Bajoran people. That's what really made it interesting, because you would think normally that Someone like that would be very pure of spirit, but to be honest, he was anything but, and that was probably his best quality. At least that made him the most intriguing. So, yeah. And then, of course, the fact that they finally, in comics, have continued the end of that DS9 storyline, and, 25 years later, we get a continuation of what happened at the end of DS9, where he left to go to, I guess, a spiritual plane, for lack of a better term, with the prophets, and now he's back doing what he's doing. So it's definitely been a fun journey to see where he's at and where the comic series right now is going, because he is definitely a very different character than he was at the end of the DS9 TV show. So if you haven't checked out the current Star Trek run with IDW, highly encourage it. I really think you'll enjoy it. Alright, number one at this point is not going to shock anybody, but this was my show. This is my crew, my captain, Jean-Luc Picard. Star Trek The Next Generation was the first TV show that I really got to watch from beginning to end. It started when I was probably 4 or 5 years old, and then went till I was almost a teenager, or right at a teen. So I grew up with this captain, with this ship, and with this crew. So, and then to this day, Picard is still my favorite. His character growth throughout the entire series, for me, was one of the biggest growth that I had ever seen compared to some of the others. Now, granted, like Pike, only got to one season, so we don't know. But even over like Janeway and Sisko over the years, for the most part, they were who they were. And yes, everybody grows as a character and a person over, but I think Picard had the biggest growth. He was very, very rigid, meh on kids at the beginning of the series, very military. And you got to see him over the course of the TV show and the comics, movies, grow, and you see the softer side of him. You see the sense of family that he gains from that crew and whatnot. And I think that's why that character has always resonated with me as my favorite captain. I thought his sense of morality when he was young was amazing. I honestly wish I could be like that in some ways, but his his ability to tell you something with just a look, I think, was one thing that sticks out amongst the others. I saw it several times where somebody would bark something at him, and he wouldn't have to say anything. He could just give you a look, a gesture, something that said anything you needed to know about him. And yeah, so you could hear me gush over it all day, but I probably keep going for like 30 minutes. But that's my favorite captain of all time in all of the Star Trek universe. If I were to give you a listing of my favorite shows, The Next Generation would be number one. I'm probably not going to do that list just because that one's a little too easy. I'm still kind of trying to decide what I'm going to do next in this series. I'm probably going to really nerd out and talk to you about my favorite ships. That's just something I want to do. And just let me know. Are there other things in Star Trek you want to hear me talk about? You want me to list some of my favorite movies in order. Some of the other side characters, which I can go on for days about that one as well. Side character wise, I could probably easily do 10 just off the top of my head. So yeah, just let me know in the comments, who is your favorite Star Trek captain? What other things would you like to see me do with this little Star Trek thing over the next several weeks, couple of months? I may not do it that often. Just let me know down in the comments, and let me know how much of my list you agree or disagree with. I'm sure there are some that feel like Jonathan Archer should be on here, and several others. I didn't even touch stuff like the Mirror Universe. That's just getting really deep in there. I tried to stick with what's most well known to everybody for this one, just to make it a little more fun, a little more relatable, and not geek out too much. So yeah, I'm gonna get out of your hair. Please have a great rest of your week. Stay safe, stay healthy. I will catch you next time. Later, everybody.